All right, let's talk about Sampotes. One, I got a new mic, really great. Two, this weapon is amazing. I think most people are aware of this at this point. There's kind of a big three when it comes to slam weapons between this, the Magistar, and the Architectron. This weapon specifically is special because it doesn't use influence and it doesn't use just like base damage the way the Magistar does. It uses afflictions. And the reason it uses afflictions is because each of the explosions has a chance to proc status, and each of the explosions counts as a knockup. And so what ends up happening for especially just mobs, but also like some bosses, and I'll demonstrate that later, for example, on the tank in 1999, you end up almost always getting an afflictions proc, which one, scales with itself if you have status damage on, and two, just does a lot of damage. So let's get into it. So the first most important thing about all slam weapons that you should probably know is that there's a couple of ways to cancel them. The first is just rolling. So you can just slam again immediately as long as you roll afterwards. The second thing is that you can actually cancel them with emotes. So for example, I just have my top emote here bound to caps lock. It's just the wolf howl. It doesn't really matter what it is, because what you'll be doing is you'll be slamming and then you'll be pressing the emote key twice. And this will immediately cancel the slam, so you can do it immediately again. This works with all emotes as far as I'm aware, and it also works with some abilities. So for example, if I do this and then I press null star, this will cancel the ability and I can slam again. Like that. So yeah, if you're trying to get the most DPS out of this thing, what you really should be doing is just slam, emote, cancel, slam, emote, cancel. It used to be the case that you could actually block mid-slam with this weapon. This was the only weapon in the game that could do that. But as of Takrot Encore, that bug is fixed and replaced with some other bugs that I probably won't go over because they don't help. It's just sometimes you'll get stuck in weird states with like exalted weapons. And I'm not really sure fully how to reproduce them, so I'm not going to go over them here. Okay. Let's talk about the tank. So the important thing to note here is that the tank specifically, for whatever reason, is considered knocked up by the explosions. I don't know if it's because of a bug or what, but for whatever reason, if you slam with the Sampotes on the tank, it will do the afflictions hits and scale them the way it would on a normal, like, knock-upable enemy. And so as long as the tank has status, you can see that, like, basically by the second explosion that hits it, the tank will end up dying immediately. You cannot one-shot the second phase of the tank because it is immune to status in solo missions. In public missions, or just with friends, only the host can't status the tank. Everybody else can. So as long as a damaging status is on the tank, you will be able to one-shot. But what you'll see here is that you don't really need it. This will take like 2 slams and the thing will die. And the reason for that is because each of, like, every single one of these explosions is hitting the tank, which is pretty good. I will be doing a longer video at some point about tank speedruns in general, especially those without, like, the Latron Incarnate, which is the only way to armor strip the tank. Just kind of going over what my loadout is for it, as I don't have a Latron Incarnate right now. Since I think somebody will probably find it useful. But you can see that this seems to work fine. My PB right now is a 308, and as far as I'm aware, the current world record is 230. So about 30 seconds behind, but not bad considering, like, how casually I take the runs. But yeah, pretty good boss. Another thing worth noting is that on the newest patch, the bar that would tell you how close the thing is to, like, coming out of invincibility is gone, but it does roar 13 times before it shows up. You can also teleport into the tank to grab the arcane early. You just have to kind of teleport underneath the treads or, like, into the lights at the front. Just make sure you don't go too far or the portal will literally go through it. Okay, this is what I'm using for the build. So the most important thing here is that combo does not scale the waves. So if you had a build like this, for example, you would get scaling from Weeping Wounds and Blood Rush, so that the crit chance and the status would scale, but the actual damage doesn't scale with your combo multiplier. At least for the waves, right? So the 10-meter slam radius would work. So everything basically directly around you. But everything else wouldn't. Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds will work. but you won't get the damage scaling. So you can see I'm hitting like 38k here. Versus if I use my just standard not tank build. We're already doing like 500k per slam, basically. Just much, much stronger to not have combo on this. Specifically because the waves just don't scale with combo. So this is what I've gone with for a build. You don't need heavy attack windup speed because you can just emote cancel at the end of things, so this is slightly better than this. But if you have a tendency to fuck up slam attacks for whatever reason, you can use this, it's perfectly fine. 2, this is my Riven. It's just crit chance and, crit damage and electricity. The best stats for a Riven in general are going to be a combination of crit chance, crit damage, and elemental damage. This is just what I have. If you don't have a Riven, what you should be using instead is just more elemental damage. And if that also isn't something you like for whatever reason, you can just use Gladiator. This is perfectly okay. I haven't done math on what is the best actual thing to have here. It's probably crit damage or it's probably elemental damage. The only other thing that is particularly important to know about slam weapons in general, but this weapon specifically, is that pressure points and seismic wave scale additively. So if you have these, it's also worth mentioning that the Nero mods also give slam damage. So it may be better to replace these with something else if you have a Riven with like just regular damage. This is what I use on Nova. This stance isn't necessarily important anymore because, like, if you look at this, we're just sitting at 2x, right? So it's just scaling the base hit. It's not scaling any of the waves. What you could do instead is you could replace this with like corrosive projection, for example, if you wanted like the most damage, just from the waves. When it comes to this build specifically, it's designed for killing the tank, right? So we have Fury in here too. This is not necessarily the build that you should be using with the Sampotes all the time. It doesn't really matter. I can show you, this is just my normal Slova build, which is just a high strength build for Roar, and then just a bunch of duration. We don't have any other arcanes that are increasing damage here. It's just Augmented and Aegis. And you can see that this does fine, even without those mods. Completely unnecessary. This weapon's so strong anyways that it doesn't really matter. And frankly, like if you have an enemy that has a gigantic hitbox and is going to get hit by multiple explosions, none of the mods matter. So for example, I can literally do this. And just put like elemental damage on here so that we get a status. And we're going to put some status damage on here. So just regular melee elementalist. So just, we have something that does damage that's a status type, and we have status damage. And what'll happen is melee afflictions will still kill things, just by itself. As soon as we actually proc status. We actually have to proc a status though. There we go. So you can see he's just already taking 261k toxin procs just from this. That's just how the weapon works. That's how afflictions works specifically. And again, there will be some links down in the description below that will have the reason that this stuff works. No slam video would be complete without mentioning how Zephyr interacts with slam weapons. So this is about how much damage we'll be doing with just this. Juggernauts are immune to knockup, and so afflictions won't proc on them. This will do a lot of damage, but it won't do quite as much damage as if I do this. You can see that even with the Juggernaut's insane damage reduction, these end up doing quite a bit of damage to them. And the reason for this is because anytime one of these explosions hits one of the tornadoes, it is doing the damage again. So with the Funnel Clouds augment, that'll just make an extra 8 tornadoes spawn. You end up with a moderate fuckload of damage. I've seen this be used specifically with the Magistar to one-shot level cap disruption targets on the Sanctum Atomica tile set, which is like, they're so hard to one-shot. They have so much damage reduction that it's really, really hard to one-shot them. But it works here too. So take that as you will. Worth mentioning that this will also work on the Sanctum Atomica boss. So you can literally just dump a whole bunch of tornadoes and then use this, and a whole bunch of damage will happen all at once. The Magistar will be better because the Deimos boss does have damage attenuation. So unfortunately, this is not the best weapon for that. It does a lot of damage, but it does a lot of damage over time. All right, I think that's about it. Slam weapons are going to get nerfed in about one patch, so all of this might be changing. But I figured it would be useful to capture how good this is right now, just for myself and for anybody in the future who has to see this. Worth noting that if the changes do happen to slam weapons, where if you jump higher, the slam radius is bigger, it's possible the Sampotes won't get affected. They would have to do some very specific Sampotes tweaks to make it weaker, where like the explosions just don't work anymore, or like the explosions are smaller, or they don't go as far with slam distance. And even if that's the case, it'll still probably be a strong weapon. But yeah, good weapon. Have a good time.